Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of T.O.BlueJays. Today's shout out goes to my father-in-law, Alejandro Veloz, who is my biggest supporter of this YouTube channel. So, muchas gracias. So, luckily, the Blue Jays won yesterday in Pittsburgh. They won 4-0. They now have a 19-14 record heading into today's game, which is about to start here about 6:37 Eastern Time. And um, the reason it was lucky that they got that win, despite the fact that Pittsburgh's also playing well, is the fact that the Jays got swept by Boston. Um, and yes, it was in Boston. It was on the road. The weather was pretty awful. But sadly enough, it wasn't the pitching or even really the bats that lost us that game or that series, I should say. It was the defense. The defense was horrendous. You know, at the beginning of the season, Bo Bichette was making his regular errors, but looked like he was getting better. Now, obviously, all the losses we can't blame on Bichette or the infield in general. Even the outfield was having a few rough spots there, especially in left field. And Matt Chapman just hasn't been the same defensively this year. He's been on tear offensively, luckily, but the defense, the platinum glove defense that we're all accustomed to seeing from Chapman has not been there so far this year. I wouldn't even say gold glove um, at all either, which I know he didn't win last year. I don't know how, but nonetheless, he has not been the same defensively. And that's kind of been our downside this year has been primarily the defense. Well, at least in the last week, anyways. Pitching has been somewhat of a downside here and there. The bats, not too much, but a few times here and there. But definitely that series in Boston where we just got swept was just awful. And um, the thing I have was getting swept by Boston, especially this year, is that Boston's not the team it used to be. They're in a little bit more of a rough patch right now. Like they're not horrible. They now have a 20-14 record, so they're half a game ahead of us going into today's game, but that is because they swept us. But Boston's a lower tier team in the AL East now. I mean, if you look at where the Orioles are, they are where we were a few years ago. They got the young rookies. Now, granted, I don't think the Orioles have had as tough a schedule as the Blue Jays have yet. And, the Blue Jays have only played 12 games at home and they've already played 21 on the road. And, they got a long road trip still. They got another, I believe it's 4 games on the road still. They got another, or no, 5. They got another 2 in Pittsburgh and another 3. I forget where they're going next before they finally come home again. And, they've played some of the Yankees. He played the Astros. Now I know the Yankees are 17-16, or maybe 16-15. So the Yankees haven't had a good start either. But still, the Blue Jays, they played some tougher teams and mainly on the road. Luckily enough for us right now, Pittsburgh is not as hot as they were to start the season. So hopefully we can at least win the series. I don't expect to sweep them, but it would be nice if we can at least get back to 6 games over 500. So 2 series over 500 today, to make it 20-14 record. So far, I mean, Kiermaier's probably been obviously the best addition to the team defensively. Chris Bassett has done much better since his first start in St. Louis. Brios and Kikuchi have given us pleasant surprises, especially Kikuchi. I mean, Brios has still kind of had a few rough starts already, but Kikuchi has just pitched so well for the most part. It's really good to see that. And for the most part, too, the bats have been better. I mean, I think Bo already has what 6 or 7 home runs. Vlad is hitting for a higher average. There's a lot less swing and miss. The biggest thing I would take away from that Seattle series is every time Teoscar struck out, it was the same thing. It was the high fastball and slider way, and it was always the slider way and down. He would swing and miss, make it 0-2, and then the fastball up, strike out. And he did hit that one home run. I think it was in the third game, which helped Seattle get the win so that we didn't sweep them. But still, it's nice to see that that's not the Blue Jays' MO anymore. There's a lot more grounding out and fly balls, not striking out, which is good to see. Obviously Varsho we want to have get up there a little bit more, especially since he's in the middle of the lineup. Brandon Belt, obviously not the start we were expecting to see. I mean, no one really expected him to be a 300 hitter or a high home run hitter or even a doubles hitter. But it's pretty meek to say the least. Um, so those mainly our left-handed hitters really have to work um, work on their stuff. Varsho's been getting a little bit better. George Springer also off to a really rough start. I mean, a lot of it's just been balls have just been hit and into defensive zones, I want to say. But a lot of balls that normally would be base hit for someone not struggling have been turned into outs for him, sadly. But luckily, Kevin Kiermaier has done pretty well so far, both defensively, obviously, and also he's actually done fairly well offensively as well. So it's really nice to see. It's also really weird to see Kiermaier in a Blue Jays uniform, especially when we were playing the Rays. I know it was at home, but it just felt weird. It's going to be even more weird to see Kiermaier put on a Jays uniform at Tropicana Field. It just feels so bizarre. I know a lot of people also said that about Jackie Bradley Jr. putting on a Jays uniform at the trade deadline last year, I believe it was. Or, yeah, I think it was actually at the waiver deadline. But it wasn't as weird considering he played for Milwaukee and maybe another team before he ended up getting traded via waivers to us. But definitely Kiermaier going right from Trapa to Toronto felt really weird. But yeah, I know that we beat Boston 16-3 last year. This year we only have another 9 games against them. I don't know how many are left to be played at Fenway and how many are going to be played at Rogers Center. But nonetheless, we got to be able to beat them next year or next series regardless of where it's played. Because again, Boston's just one of those teams that we should not be losing to. They're not a strong team right now. Really, the strongest teams are obviously supposed to be Toronto, New York, which it's hard to see right now. Who knows what's going to happen there in Tampa Bay? And now we've got the Orioles coming out with their young guys too. And some of the more veteran players like Adam Frazier. So the Blue Jays are really in a really tough division again. We're not going to see 2 or 3 teams below 500 tonight. Might be another year of all AL East teams being maybe a couple games under 500 at most or above 500. And with the start that the Tampa Bay Rays have got, the Blue Jays really need to work up there because if the format's the same as last time, Tampa Bay obviously has a good track record on being the Blue Jays. Um, if the Blue Jays get into a wild card series again, and Tampa Bay is like, you know what, we want to play Toronto, or it's just the way that it works that the Blue Jays, let's say, are the fifth or sixth team to get in, and then Tampa Bay gets to play them. Um, that won't bode well for the Jays. Um, as it seems that Toronto just has bad luck against Florida teams in general. Luckily, the Leafs got past the Tampa Bay Lightning for once, but now we're down to nothing against the Florida Panthers, of old teams. So that's just a common issue for Toronto, apparently, is more Southern Eastern teams. But, we still have to play the Tampa Bay Rays more this year. Luckily, we got 2 out of 3 of them this past series back at home, or the one prior to this last series back at home. And we gave them their first 2 losses of the season. So that's a good start for us. So we won't get too ahead of ourselves this year. I think a lot of us did that last year, and it wasn't another good run in the playoffs once again. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves this year, but I can hope that the Blue Jays defensive woes continue to be very low, very minimal. I know that I think it was Monday night. It was the first time that the Jays had made over 3 errors in one game. Not that 3 errors in one game is really any good either. Um, but hopefully we get back to a defensively great Matt Chapman, continue good outfield defense in both left field, center field, and now right field as well. And hopefully that, Bo Bichette gets closer to being able to, be not gold level standard per se at shortstop, but at least a standard that fans and media and probably even Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro can go, okay, you know what? That is our shortstop. We're not going to think about moving him to second anymore because, offensive numbers have been great this year. So in that regard, it's good to see that Bo's having a better start this season than he did last year. But again, he wants to play shortstop. He's still got to prove it defensively. Again, I'm not expecting him to be a gold glove like Vlad to become at first base, but at least it's got to be believable. Believable. But nonetheless, hope the Blue Jays get back over 6 games above 500, can get the series win here in Pittsburgh, and hopefully win 2 or 3 more on the road trip after this game tonight and come back home with at least 6 or 7 games above 500. So, as always, go Jays, go. See you in the next video.